This interview, this is no different. The unbroken movement continues. This is the perfect example of how a mind gets conditioned to withstand pain and suffering, and all things could be possible. Erin Quinn, she experienced it at 8 years old. She suffered an infection in her hip from a tooth that had to be pulled. She was in and out of the hospital, IVs. They had to treat that infection. Well, they did, but she dealt with depression, severe pain as time progressed. As she grew and was extremely active, that hip started deteriorating. You got to listen in towards the end where she shares her experience on having to get a hip replacement and what type of mindset she was in to get through it. Then, in turn, when she had a defining moment, looking herself in the mirror and saying, no more. Goal to step on stage. You got to hear to the end. Listen in to Erin. All right, man, I love this time. We have a beautiful, lovely young lady right next to me, Erin Quinn. Before I give her the mic, it's those of you who are just tuning in for the first time. This is a channel on being inspired, and Erin is no different. She is absolutely, and I love the sleeve. I'm a tattoo man by heart. She's another rock star just sitting there, all innocent, and you're thinking she lived this great life, but I got to tell you, it was far from that. She had some hurdles, but Erin was poking through my algorithms on Instagram, Erin, and those that know that this channel is about finding individuals that want to share their story, their journey, what they overcame, and how they truly, even though they might not even consider themselves unbroken, but they are unbroken because you might have got bent, but you're sitting through the other side. And I know she has an amazing story because Erin, I mean, I got to tell you, your Instagram tells it all. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it so much. So you're in it from Florida, from what I understand, right?
Yep. Here in
Okay.
North,
And currently right now, married with 2 children.
married with a soon-to-be 5 and 7-year-old.
You got your hands full for sure. For sure. So we want to start this journey where I know I read what, and I was like blown away when this started. But you caught my eye on Instagram. Anybody that shows on their Instagram site, they're in the hospital and they're showing there's something obviously happened. And I read through what you sent to me regarding hip replacement. But really got me is when you were describing it, it started at such an early age, at 8 years old. So, this I'm sure is the story you want to start and share that journey. I'm going to give it to you, but talk on how it all began at that early age and how the journey unfolded to where you are today.
Sure. So when I was 8 years old, just before Christmas, it was 1993, I contracted septic arthritis. So my parents noticed I had some difficulty walking and I had a really high fever. They brought me to the local hospital, and the hospital was a little baffled by my condition. They had never seen anything like this in a child my age before. I was born and raised in Rhode Island, and so it was a really small town, small state, quite some time to actually discover that it was a septic arthritis. It was an infection in my hip. Once they had discovered that, it had been a number of days, and that infection had essentially obliterated the health of the joint.
Shit.
Or successful. And then the very next day, they went in there and they kind of cleared it out, and that did work. But the damage had kind of been done. They believed that what had happened is I had lost a tooth and infection was introduced into the bloodstream via that lost tooth and then localized in my hip joint.
Wow. And this is 8 years. How old are you currently now?
I am 39 now.
So 39. So we're talking 31 years ago that happened. So that obviously at that young of an age? How much pain from, the prognosis? Was it just medicine? Where were you? Take us on that journey.
Oh yeah, so I was in the hospital. I believe it was a little over a week. The beginning is still blurry. I don't really remember it. But I came home in a wheelchair and then I had crutches. I had to essentially relearn how to walk. And I dragged around an IV pole for a good few months just because they needed to continue to pump me full of antibiotics. And so I had to relearn how to walk really. And I had all didn't get to be with my friends at such a young age. Christmas was kind of a bust because I was in the hospital during that. I can remember my sister being really mad we didn't get to open presents on Christmas.
Yeah, I mean that's devastating. So just to set the stage, as far as 8 years old, siblings. You mentioned one sister. Any others?
Nope, just the one older.
Just the one. Okay, and there's a reason where obviously where I'm going to be asking this as far as the direction. But at 8 years old, prior to, were you active sports, anything up until that point? And your sister, was there a level of activity in sports where you were developing from a mindset of, competitiveness type of thing?
I wasn't really a competitive kid. I did play soccer and I did ballet for a little while, but we weren't super into sports. We were just kind of like your normal active kids. We had our playground in the yard that we would run around and we get let loose in the neighborhood, just a normal kid.
Right. Do you recall like depression?
I've been to therapy and they have told me that I definitely suffered from PTSD from that whole ordeal, having to get multiple IVs almost every day and getting poked and stuff. Just being in the hospital in general at that age was really scary. And then being kind of ostracized from all my friends and not being in school, I felt different, especially as a kid where you're really thriving on at that age and being involved.
I'm assuming at some point you were off the IVs. There was some relative help in a positive nature.
Yeah, yep. So I was able to go back to school after a few months. I remember that being a really happy day. And I essentially went back to normal. I had great mobility in my hip, considering everything that had happened. They did a good job of cleaning out the infection. I don't think that I really struggled mentally or physically with it until I got to high school and I started kind of growth spurting again. And I started having a lot of pain and I couldn't partake in a lot of physical activity. Gym class was really difficult for me. Running was just not in the cards. I
So
tried.
there you had a lot of restriction based on the damage of the hip that it had. And
Yeah.
growing was obviously, it didn't get better in essence because there was irreversible damages.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, throughout high school, I did have some issues with pain management. I ended up back in the hospital with some pretty severe pain at least once. And, they managed it, but then they kind of sent me on my way. And I had specialists telling me, you're going to be facing a hip replacement before you turn 40, but they didn't really know when.
And this is by age 16, 17 years old.
Yeah. I think I was probably about 14, 15.
15. Okay, so this is taking you through high school. So I circle back to the question I had earlier. At this point, obviously, the mind is a little bit more matured. How were you handling, from a mental standpoint, the news and your ongoing issues? How was that being dealt with?
Looking back on it, um, I think the biggest thing for me was physically, I was pretty shy. I had this big scar on my hip. I didn't like wearing bathing suits or anything like that. I couldn't really keep up with my friends during certain activities, like I said, in gym class and stuff. Even just walking long distances was really difficult for me. And so I started to fall into a pretty deep depression right around junior year of high school. And I do believe that it was very related to being kind of physically incapacitated.
Oh,
So I did end up on medication and I was in therapy. Getting out of high school and into college was a big thing for me. It definitely helped being a little more independent and finding my niche outside of being labeled as the kid that was in the hospital for so long. Oh, that's
Right.
weird.
So now you're going in your own, you're developing yourself. Be,
Yeah,
talk,
yeah.
how was your health overall? Talk to me about that.
It was pretty good, but I think that I got so used to being uncomfortable that it just became the new norm. If I had to walk across campus for a class and it ached, then I just dealt with it.
Yeah, that I got to tell you, Erin, you are a rock star, especially, and I say this, man, your mindset. And this is where that question comes into play of like, I'm always on the hunt as the investigator when I do these interviews because I want to know what makes Erin's mind tick. Like it is so powerful, and I don't know if you ever really thought about it that way, but your mindset is tremendous. Like I saw the pictures and we talk about you had the double hip replacement, or was it solo?
Just one so far.
Just the one that's so far. Okay, so you had the hip replacement. I saw that, and then we're gonna get to that. But it's like, okay, 8 years old, hip replacement in your mid-30s. It's like there's a time. What makes her tick?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question because I know the answer. What do you think developed your mindset to make you just keep moving? Because you're still moving in a direction of as normal as possible. You're still going to school. You're still becoming something. The aspirations and goals we didn't discuss, but what do you feel that magical potion was? What
Yeah.
what waved it? What do you think it is? There's the one question.
I know, that's a tough question. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is just having goals as an individual, having dreams and kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. Everybody asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I had, a passion for animals, and I got my first job when I was 14, and just basically focusing on that, focusing on the future and not kind of wallowing in the present as much as possible.
So it's a tough question. Everybody wants to ask, okay, what happened to you? And then you share all the good things you did, but
Mhm.
there's a piece missing. It's like where is the mind frame? Why do others in your position? Because we know it. And the easy route is, not wanting to be above ground anymore, or just in a deep, dark, circular pearl bar in the corner and heavily medicated. I mean, those are the easy ways, right? Kind of elaboration to you on what I see and heard and coming from, others I've interviewed is it's all about mindset, right? It's really developing your mindset. And when individuals come across bumps and bruises and they can either go to two different paths, and there's this defining moment, which I'll ask you as the journey, you share the journey more, and then there accompanies the inspiration on what makes you take the next step to reach those goals and those defining moments. What you established in such an early age at 8 is your mindset already. You were introduced to pain. You were introduced to challenges early on. I mean, that's why I was asking early, were you competitive? Because somebody's getting that competitive nature. They are up against, the challenges of disappointment and goal oriented and having to push through and do what it takes to get there. I mean, 8 years old is so early on. We talk about now but now 8 years old, I mean, they're looking to go in the Olympics. I mean, it's a different level today. But you got introduced to pain and suffering such an early age. And as you went through it, it became second nature. It was
Mhm.
like, pain, I got that. No worries. Because that's what you shared. You were in college, so we take it. So now you made that, that pain no biggie because then you added goals on top of it. So it's like, I could still move. I'm good. So that kudos, man. That is like, man, people got to try to imagine individuals trying to develop that mindset at a later part in age to accomplish. That's why, and just say a funny comment on weight loss remedies, quick fixes is $1 billion industry because nobody has that mindset. They develop that mindset, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of eat like shit, feel like shit, no exercise, feel like shit, and all the above. And all of a sudden, I want to get in shape. And where's that magical pill? It's like developing that mindset. So you're in college, you got this strength mindset. You're blowing it through. Take us through. After college, what were you? Fill us in.
Yeah. I think I still was definitely um, pretty depressed throughout those years, but I had my friends, I had my goals, I had dreams and aspirations, and they kept me going. After college, I decided that I was going to basically find some independence, and I packed up my car and I moved across the country to Colorado, found a job on Craigslist, and just found a place to live and kind of got out there to see what I could do. That was one of the biggest things I feel like I've done in my past
Mm-hmm.
was just jumping ship and going out on my own. And I learned a lot from that. And when I was out there in Colorado, I did a lot of hiking, a lot of physical activity, and it slowly started dawning on me that the pain was starting to ramp up. As I was getting into my mid 20s and later 20s, I was a little less capable of going as far on a hike. I couldn't I definitely couldn't stretch certain ways, couldn't move certain ways. And I'm a dog groomer by trade. So I was doing a lot of physical activity in that regard as well, heavy lifting and bent over, grooming dogs, holding onto their legs and stuff. So I started, but I ended up moving back to the East Coast after having a stint out West. And then I met my husband who happened to be in Utah. He's a wildland firefighter.
Wow.
And so I moved back out west to be with him. But that kind of brought a whole new set of challenges being in a relationship where you're alone for, a good 8 months out of the year. So I really had to be self sufficient physically, mentally, emotionally. I had to just kind of keep my head down.
So, pain started coming with vengeance, and you're how old at this juncture?
I was like 28 at that point.
Okay. So how did you get through the ups and downs? How did you handle it?
I am ridiculously driven when it comes to like projects and keeping myself busy. So I would give myself just these little goals. I was living in his house in Utah and I decided I'm going to paint the whole thing. Redid the irrigation system. I just got my hands dirty and decided I was going to.
Distraction. You handled it with distraction.
Yes, I kept myself busy is what I.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so when did you transplant to Florida? When did that come about?
So we didn't move to Florida until August of 2022.
Okay, and then at that time you had children.
So our first, Susanna, was born in 2017, and that was in Idaho.
Okay.
We in Utah, Rhode Island, Colorado, and Idaho before we moved to Florida.
So you made a little tour.
Yes, we did a lot of back and forth. And then our second was born in 2019.
Understood. So at that point, what level of stage was pain-wise or prognosis or deterioration to realize that going under the knife at some point in time is going to happen?
Yeah, after having kids, it was starting to go downhill before them, but then having kids, it was a steep decline. Pregnancy was pretty uncomfortable for me, that pressure on my hips, and I was still grooming dogs. I was running a dog grooming salon that I had opened in Idaho. and my lower back was actually starting to bother me as well.
I can't even, yeah, I mean, Jesus, that alone, had to be. Any, like, as far as pain management issues that you had or anything, but had a handle on, or more so dependent?
Yeah, I was still of the mindset that, I'm a mom now. My husband's away fighting fire. I'm running the household, running this business. I gotta keep my head up, keep.
Yeah, so you had that mindset, which is just a rock star. I mean, yeah, that strong mindset you developed, and I could say with great confidence that it kept getting stronger and stronger because you pushed through. So when was the point where you it was like, I've really got an issue and I've got to get it taken care of?
So it was very shortly after we moved to Florida. I was really enjoying the change in weather. In Idaho, we were living under 14 feet of snow. Here in Florida, it was sunshine all day, every day. So I was getting out and I was like, I want to take walks. I want to bring my dog for a walk. And I couldn't make it around the block without being crippled for a few days in pain. And so I decided that I needed to find a specialist and figure out, where am I at with everything. And I forgot to mention before we moved to Florida, I did have an MRI in Rhode Island, and they found a large herniated disc in my lower back.
Oh boy, to add on to the, you know,
Yeah. And so I found a specialist in Jacksonville here in Florida, and he did some x-rays and specialized in an orthopedic surgeon. And as soon as he showed me the results of the x-rays, my jaw dropped. My
wow.
right hip was so far displayed out of the joint just from all of that time and damage that had been done. And then my left hip, which was kind of really holding me up the whole time, had suffered as well as a result.
So I'm sure if he didn't say it, he was thinking, how are you withstanding the pain on this thing?
Oh yeah, it's kind of funny you say I just dealt with it because
Exactly.
he had me up on the exam table and he's kind of poking and prodding and he's like, "Does this hurt?" And I was like, "Mm," and he was like, "Don't lie. Does it hurt?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah, Aaron, I mean, you want to think about, you know, I got to hats off, man. You have no idea how strong your mind is to comparing. Like, it's you because you started it at 8 years old, but it's like amazing. Think of somebody that did not experience that level of pain up until now. And normally hip is elderly, right? You're in your 60s per se. So you imagine that, and then the saving grace was your pain threshold and your mindset, because it could have been, sacrificed of addiction. You got the whole OxyContin and all this other fentanyl, all this other stuff that could be. But so kudos. I can't say it enough. So after hearing all that, what was the plan of attack time frame? What was your thought?
I was like, we got to do this. I can't live like this anymore with the pain. And he said, your right hip, it's due. It needs replaced. A total hip replacement is what we're looking at. The left hip, he said, we're going to see how much time we can get out of it, but sometime within the next 10 years, that'll have to be replaced as well. And the herniated disc is kind of as a result of, being off kilter in my
Right.
pelvis, putting all that pressure on my lower back with grooming dogs and stuff. So that I dealt with that with PT, and that was okay. I said, I don't want to touch that. I want to deal with the hip. Let's get the hip fixed and we'll go from there. So I was there, I think in January, and I had my surgery March 1st of 2023. So a little over a year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago, and everything went well. No complications. All good.
Everything went well, no complications. Everyone told
Praise
me
the
that
Lord.
back really quick. I didn't experience that quite as much. Maybe because I had let, it had.
Yeah, you had. Yeah, I mean, come on. Yeah, yours wasn't like the lickety split.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It took me it took me a good month before I felt comfortable kind of bearing weight on my leg. And everything that goes along with a hip replacement recovery, that the things you don't think about, having to use a toilet seat
Right.
raiser, getting in and out of the bed, all those difficulties, putting your shoes on.
Yeah, everything we take advantage of, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so while I was recovering, I can remember just a moment in time of having this mind shift where I was like, I don't want to feel like this broken person in my fees. Like, I felt like I needed to prove to myself that I am still capable of doing great things.
Oh boy. So it was a defining moment. Go ahead, tell us that again, because that is outstanding. Because I know the ending. You're going to keep sharing.
Okay. It was the where I went to go to the bathroom and I caught a look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, oh, my mangled leg. I look like I have been run over by a truck. I feel like I should not be this is not 39. Oh, this is the body of, like you said, like a 60-year-old getting a hip replacement. I was like, I cannot let myself get down in the dumps about this. I need a new goal. I need to prove to myself that I still am living in a capable body. I've got these young kids that want to be picked up. They want to be played with. I still groom dogs and I wanted to continue doing that. Like you said, I have an active lifestyle and I thrive so heavily on that. So at that moment, I was like, I'm going to challenge myself and I'm going to go big. I decided I wanted to change my diet and start working out, build muscle and flexibility and really help my joint and this new hip, last as long as possible and support it with muscle essentially. And my idea of doing that was to enter a bikini.
That
Oh,
is like ridiculously awesome, man. That is so awesome. And I'm going to quote you on what you said, go big or go home.
mhm.
So you were all in. So that is like the mindset, the power of the mindset is so untouchable. And you developed such a great mindset for so many to really radiate that inspiration, of what you did. It's incredible. So you hooked up with a coach you mentioned and learned what needed to get done to shine under the night, which was this month, the 9th, I think,
Yeah,
was it?
yep. So I met up with my coach. I had actually contacted her when I was still recovering from surgery and gave her a kind of a rundown on my situation. And she she wasn't new to coaching, but she had never coached someone with a hip replacement, especially at my age. And I told her, this is what I want to do. I want to get in better shape and I want to strive to be in a bikini contest. And she was kind of like, all right, well, let's get together when you're done recovering and we'll kind of come up with a plan. And that was so I had my surgery March 1st of 2023 and then June 1st of 2023. So 3 months later, we met our first time and she just started helping me with basic body mechanics, getting
Mm-hmm.
exercise and body weight strength training underway. And we practiced and came up with this um, workout plan that led us all the way through to earlier this month. So it was almost a year and a half, a little under a year and a half of training with her before I finally stepped on stage because I said, I don't want to rush. I want to make sure I'm doing this right. I don't want to, push myself so much that I hurt myself. And that was kind of the plan we came up with.
That is absolutely fantastic. And I couldn't say any other recommendation to help get back your 39-year-old body
Mhm.
from the 65-year-old you feel with the hip. Because, listen, I mean, muscle has no age. You could build muscle at any age, and muscle is the key to longevity. So that is kudos to you, man. I mean, that's fantastic. What an inspirational journey, Erin. And you did very well from what I understand on it, what I saw.
I was blown away. It was so fun. I ended up competing in the bikini open as well as bikini tall. So for the open or novice, I got second place,
It's
and bikini
fantastic.
tall, I got first place.
Congratulations. So, my well deserving. And I'm sure the aspirations are endless on what you want to do in the future. I'm
I
sure
know
with this.
it sparked, the drive even further. I'm ready to do another one. I want to do it next year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm very proud to have heard the story and proud of you for sure. So one question and then one comment. How's your hip feeling thus far? How's it been since?
It's really good. I will say the hip that has not been replaced does give me some issues occasionally. And I have kind of my twinges and pops here and there, but it's strong. I can tell that, I'm hip thrusting over 300 pounds
Yeah,
and, deadlifting more than I weigh. And I know that it's surrounded now by all of this healthy muscle and that keeping moving is the best thing to do for it.
that's awesome. That's fantastic. So you mentioned one word as far as you didn't want to be broken, and I could say coming on this show, this story is absolutely. It might have been bent, maybe cracked a little bit, but certainly not broken.
Mhm.
Definitely unbroken. Any words of encouragement that you would say to anybody going through similar circumstances? What would you share?
Yeah, I would have to say that, nothing is impossible. Get rid of the negative self-talk because you really can do it. If you set your mind to it, you can do it. And I have to give just a huge shout out to my husband. He is my biggest supporter throughout all of this, and he has always believed in me. Even from the moment that I told him, "Hey, babe, I want to do a bikini contest," and he was like, "You got this."
That's awesome.
That support really, it'll make or break it too. You got to have the friends and the family that cheer you on as well, because your drive is infectious and being motivated yourself is inspiring to others. And
That
that
is.
I love so much about this whole journey is just, perseverance. You can do it.
Yeah, that's words of wisdoms, and that is, gives me chills because that's the passion of this channel. Just to be able to hear, others like Erin Quinn about their journey. Regular people sharing the mindset, the strength that this woman shows, the perseverance of going through, hip issues, starting at the age of 8 until your late 30s. I mean, seriously, what? Like what? When somebody says the strongest individuals, it's like I can name so many on the channel. So if you like the channel, please subscribe, share, comment. I mean, it's about inspiring individuals, regular individuals like Erin, by one story at a time. Erin, thank you so much for coming on the show. I
Thank you.
greatly appreciate it.